Right, YouTube, today I got two heinous stories for you coming from Australia. But before I continue, I know you're thinking the background's a bit different. It's because I moved house. I don't quite have all the items delivered, to spruce up the background. So before you guys start bashing your keyboard saying true red, fix your ambience, mother bitch, it's coming. The next 2 or 3 videos might be like this, but I promise you, all will be back and we'll be looking pucker in no time. Now in this video, I'm sure there'll be some cursing. There won't be too many jokes because this is no laughing matter. I don't know if you can hear an echo when I speak. I'll try and fix the sound as much as I can. Like I said, first time filming in my new house. Forgive me, I'm still working on it. Christy Abrahams. She took the life of her 6-year-old after years of abusing her. She was sentenced to 16 years in jail without the possibility of parole. She pled guilty to taking the life of her daughter Keisha, whose remains were found in bushland in Sydney, Australia. These events took place in early 2011 and the body was found 8 months after it initially went missing. There were angry scenes outside of the state's Supreme Court as the prisoner van carried Abrahams into court. Inside the courtroom, it was packed, and the judge, or justice as they call it in Australia, his name was Ian Harrison. He laid down the sentence, and throughout the whole time, Abrahams sat with her back to the public gallery. Abrahams showed no emotion as she was sentenced for murder and interfering with a corpse. "Rot in hell," someone in the public gallery shouted at her as she was led away. The judge told the court that the crime ranked in the mid-range of seriousness because it was an impulsive and uncontrolled act of violence. The judge did say that Abrahams did show remorse and is unlikely to offend again, and that her intellectual disability and experience of her being abused as a child is the reason on why this crime happened. The court heard that Abrahams was subjected to anti-Aboriginal comments as a child and had witnessed domestic violence in her childhood at home. Abrahams herself was put into foster care at the age of 10 after her mother died. Keisha, however, her daughter, suffered her whole life. The judge said that Keisha did not deserve this suffering and had to be protected. It is said that her body was kept in a suitcase before it was initially disposed of. The judge said that when the autopsy was submitted on Keisha's body, it appeared that she had suffered physical abuse her whole life, but it could not be proven if this was caused by Abraham all the time. The judge said that in the last 18 months of Keisha's life, the frequency of violence increased. The DNA profile of Keisha, her blood was found on her mother's unit. Her partner, Robert Smith, had already been jailed for 12 years for his role in this killing. Abrahams told the police that she nudged her daughter and she said, "Go put your pajamas on," and after she did this, she hit her on the head. Abraham said that her daughter was like jelly when she put her to bed, and when she came the next morning, Keisha was not breathing. Miss Abrahams and Smith attempted to destroy all evidence that they thought could implicate them in this incident. This included removing evidence from the house that they lived, throwing away the clothes that they used, and removing SIM cards from their phones. Smith himself burnt the body before burying. He also burnt the bag the body was in before burying and threw away the hammer he used to dig the hole in the first place. The court papers said that Abrahams was present during the disposal of the body, and an autopsy revealed that Keisha had fractured teeth. Keisha also had 10 separate injuries to the head, jaw, and body. Now, what's peculiar about this is that the Department of Community Services initially put Keisha into foster care when she was only 15 months. This is because Abrahams bit her shoulder. But then the child was given back to Abrahams, who had anger management counseling. That's astounding to me. When she was 3, Keisha did tell this government committee that her mother burnt out cigarettes on her. The child government agency also revealed that the neighbors did complain to them several times about Keisha receiving abuse, and also the education authorities did contact the child service agencies confirming that Keisha didn't get to school much. She didn't turn up a lot. In fact, it was confirmed that Keisha only attended school 4 times in her life. School teachers and other witnesses confirmed bruising whenever on Keisha's head whenever they saw her. This story takes the piss. How many times have we heard government authorities or agencies who look into it or who take the baby for some reason, but then for some reason they give it back. There's other stories that I've covered. What the fuck are you doing? Imagine that. Imagine you're a mother, right? You're smoking away, yeah, living your life, fair play, whatever, it's your choice. But then you put that cigarette into the baby's skin. How much do you hate that child? That's not child abuse trauma, right? That's not, for me, that's not a mental health issue. That's hate. That's self-pity. That's the mother taking out whatever anger she has on the child. And she got 16 fucking years. 16 years for killing a child. I don't care on the circumstances. 16 years is not enough. But I think you can agree it's an interesting conversation, right? Because in America, mate, you're going to jail for life for at least 30, 40, 50 years. But in Europe, you get lighter sentences because I guess the advent of human rights is looked at in a different way, right? Like in Europe, it's not often you'll hear a life sentence because they believe it goes against, human rights and semantics and all that stuff. And I don't know exactly the law, so, I'm going to shut up about it, but you get what I'm saying. But 16 years is not enough. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So now we come on to the second murder. And in 1993, a little boy by the name of John Ashfield, he was 6 years old. His life was taken by a hammer to his head. His mother, Gun Britt Ashfield, who was 25 at the time, led the assault. Her boyfriend, Austin Allen Hughes, who was a key participant, was 20 years old. Now, according to the evidence presented in court, Ashfield in December 1993 became enraged when it was revealed that John, who was in the first grade of East Narra Primary School, which is in New South Wales in Australia, apparently John touched his 3-year-old sister in an inappropriate way. So the mother and her boyfriend agreed that John should not be allowed to get away with it, and he certainly didn't, as 24 hours later, he died in hospital. His tiny body covered in more than 100 bruises from his parents' savage beating. And this beating, it ended with Hughes. He got like a local telephone book. He put the book on John's head. He got the hammer, and then he made contact. Now, what's crazy to me is that they were each sentenced to 21 years in jail. But due to appeal, this was reduced to 19 years. I don't give two flying fucks what the appeal is. How can you even reduce that sentence? 21 years in itself is a luxury. Now, what's interesting is that in 2007, which is around 14 years after the incident, the baby's mother, she changed her name to Angelique Karstrom. She applied for parole. Her boyfriend Hughes, he also applied for parole. And if it were me and they applied for parole, I would have said, get on your fucking knees and beg for it. And prior to this, in 2004, a law was passed where it made it an offense for media outlets to publish the names of a deceased child who had been the victim of a crime no matter what the circumstances were. But then in 2007, the law changed, making it permissible for the child's name to be revealed, but also the suspect and the perpetrators. Now, John's sister, Melissa, remember the one who was supposedly molested, at this time in 2007, she was 17. And at the parole hearing, she said, I want nothing to do with my mother. Melissa said that she had not seen her mother since she was 11. The last time I saw my mother, I pulled her hair and I slapped her. I have flashbacks to what happened. She tried to blame me. She tried to get me to help bash John. She tried to say that John touched me. But that never happened, and this is Melissa confirming that the whole incident was just bogus. Melissa went on to say that she remembers that day when John's life was taken. She remembers that day as clear as anything. When he came in from school that day on August the 5th, Hughes confronted him in the kitchen. She told police that when Hughes confronted John, he kicked him the way you would kick a soccer ball. He then slapped him around the head and sent him to his room. But that wasn't the end of it. The mother and Hughes decided that John needed to be taught a lesson. They then went into his bedroom, they started beating him, they started disciplining him, and they were consistently using their fists. And then they beat him with a white aluminium rod. You know the kind of rods that hold up curtains? That's what they were using. And John, at the time, he was sobbing. He said, I'm sorry. Don't do this to me. I'm sore. I'm sorry. And then Hughes, he replied, mocking him, saying, you scream like a girl. Like a fucking girl, Hughes, you little bitch. You're okay telling him that he's being weak when you, in your 20s, are beating up a 6-year-old child? How dare you speak to him like that? How dare you attack a 6-year-old and then have the nerve to call the 6-year-old basically a pussy? 21 years wasn't enough, you fucking wanker. In fact, John, he continued to sob So what does Hughes do? He goes into the cupboard, he gets out a girl's dress, and he puts it in his face. He then forced the dress through his arms and put it on the boy. And when Hughes was later speaking to the police, Hughes said that when he put the dress on, John kept saying, "Get it off, get it off, get it off." I don't know how your life was in prison, Hughes, but I fucking hope you got the same treatment. Death came slowly. Ashfield later told the police that Hughes put a book to the temple of John. He then got a hammer and he made contact with the book, and the force went through the cranium of John. He did this repeatedly over and over again until John was limp and dazed and unable to sit on his bed. When it became apparent that John had lost his consciousness, his mother, the fucking cow, she took him to the shower. Hot water, cold water, hot water, cold water. Wake up, John, wake up, John. Then several hours passed before she then decided to take John to the hospital. In the meantime, they told the other children that John had been attacked by a gang in the park. Their oldest boy, who was age 8, went on to national television and confirmed this story. On television, with his shaky voice, he said, "We were going to buy milk and bread when 4 boys said, 'Come here, we want to bash you up.'" But that story was never going to stack up. John was cold and bleeding from the nostrils when he was airlifted to Westmead Hospital in Sydney. Imagine that. I watch sports, right? I watch sports all the time. We've seen really, really bad accidents, crashes, injuries, right? Sportsmen get airlifted. When you're on the highway and you see traffic, there are some people that are airlifted to hospital because of a bad injury. Who in the blue motherfucking fuck is airlifted from their home? Imagine that, airlifted from your home because the injuries were that bad. Dr. Barry Wilkins would later tell the court that he had more than 100 different colored bruises, suggested repeated non-accidental beating. His small hands were swollen and bruised, which suggested he had attempted to fend off an assault. John suffered a really serious brain injury, and on August the 6th, which was a Friday in 1993, he died. His mother and her boyfriend were shortly charged with murder afterwards. On the day of John's funeral, his natural father, Brian Ashfield, wailed over the white coffin. Brian, who unfortunately is no longer alive at the time though, he did tell the media that he told the local community child protection services, "Please go look at my son." He told them that his wife was violent and that she intended to hurt their son. In fact, it was reported that this child agency, they had over 35 notifications telling him that this household, something wasn't right. The father, Brian, did tell him, "Take my son away from her." It's easy for me to sit here and say, "Brian, where the fuck were you?" But I think it's a legit question. Brian, rest in peace, but where the fuck were you? Melissa, the sister, her life has been chaotic since this incident took place. She was put into foster care, but due to abuse, she ran away at the age of 11. She bounced around foster homes and was briefly placed in a nunnery in Grafton until she fell pregnant at 16 and lost a baby. She admits to drinking alcohol, taking drugs to cope with her grief. The latest reports on Melissa is that she lives with her boyfriend Jason, who is 33, and she's going to counseling regularly. Eventually, on August the 15th, 2011, Angelique Karstrom, or whatever the fuck her name was now, was released from prison. Karstrom, who was wearing a black trouser suit and a white collared shirt, did not speak to media as she was escorted to a waiting vehicle by police. Dressed in black boots, black pants, and a black jacket over a white shirt, she walked straight from the prison with her head down, ignoring the media and refusing to comment. She was escorted by 2 probation and police officers. Karstrom was taken to a secret corrective services approved residential facility where she lived over the following 12 months. All she had with her was a blue garbage bag of belongings. There wasn't a single person to greet her, no family member, no nothing to come and help her. And the police did say at that time that she would be monitored for 12 months. Now, there are no words to describe these 2 stories. What are you going to say that hasn't been said? What am I going to say that you haven't thought already, right? But in both cases, these sentences certainly not harsh enough. And my understanding of Australian prisons is that they are maybe slightly better than American prisons, but I don't give a fuck what their prison conditions are, because let's be fair, good conditions, bad conditions, normal conditions could never ever make up for what they did. What possesses you to hurt your child? It's one thing to see children of someone else, right? And you dote on them and you hold them like your friends' kids, or your nephews or nieces or wherever it may be, right? Spending an hour or two with them, kids are adorable. You spend 24 hours with them, you then learn the challenges. But despite the challenges, right, how the fuck can you sit there in your right mind and hurt children the way you did? Hughes, you weak, pathetic pussy, put a hammer to the boy's head. Who the fuck do you think you are? And I can go on and on and on about how this has really pissed me off, and how when I was doing the research on this, I didn't quite break down, but I just dropped my head and closed my eyes, and I was like, like, there's probably nothing else to say on the matter. So why don't you guys comment? Tell me what you think.